Edward Douglas White, Jr. was the ninth Chief Justice of the United States. He was born on November 3, 1845, and was raised in La Forge Parish in Louisiana. His father, Edward Douglas White, Sr., was the 10th governor of Louisiana and was also a congressman and a judge. White had a Roman Catholic education and in college went to Mount St. Mary's and Georgetown College to study law. As an adult, White went on to politics in his hometown, Louisiana, as a Democrat. White was then elected to the state Supreme Court in 1878 and by 1890 elected to the U.S. Senate. After 14 years, White got evaluated by President Grover Cleveland and was elected into the U.S. Supreme Court, and 16 years later, in 1910, White became nominated by William Howard Taft to the Supreme Court as the ninth Chief Justice of the U.S. In Plessy v. Ferguson, White was a conservative member who sided with the Supreme Court to uphold the legality of the state segregation. For Gwynn v. United States, White wrote the case unanimously, which helped citizens and their 15th Amendment. During school, White had to serve time in the Civil War. There he joined as a Confederate, and during the war he was captured and held prison until the end of the conflict. Edward White died on May 19, 1921 in office and was buried at the Oak Hill Cemetery in Washington, D.C.
My Supreme Court case is the New York Times versus the U.S. In 1971, Daniel Ellsberg copied more than 7,000 pages of documents that revealed the history of the government's actions in the Vietnam War. The case originated in the Supreme Court. Daniel Ellsberg copied more than 7,000 pages of documents that revealed the history of the government's actions in the Vietnam War. They exposed government knowledge that the war would cost more lives than the public was being told, and that the war was being escalated even as the president had said it was close to ending. They would become known as the Pentagon Papers. Ellsberg believed that Americans needed to know what was in the reports and decided to make the Pentagon Papers public. Ellsberg broke several laws in order to make these papers public. He gave copies to the New York Times, which began printing excerpts from the documents on June 13, 1971. The government immediately obtained a court order preventing the Times from printing more of the documents, arguing that publishing the material threatened national security. This was the first time in American history that the government had successfully ordered a prior restraint on national security grounds. The court ruled 6-3 in New York Times versus the United States that prior restraint was unconstitutional. Though the majority justices disagreed on some important issues, they agreed that only a free, unrestrained press can effectively expose deception in government. In revealing the workings of a government that led the Vietnam War, the newspapers nobly did that which the founders hoped and trusted they would do. Dismissing the claimed threat to national security, the court continued, "The word security is a broad, vague generality whose contours should not be invoked to abrogate the fundamental law embodied in the First Amendment." New York Times versus the U.S. remains one of the most important freedom of press cases in American history.